Amid Russia-Ukraine war, US President Joe Biden speaks to Chinese President Xi Jinping. President Xi says Ukraine crisis is not something we want to see. Conflict is in no one's interest. Russian strikes hit Kyiv and outskirts of Lviv in Ukraine. 130 people rescued from the rubble of bombed Mariupol theatre. Meanwhile, India says don't politicize energy transactions. Yogi Adityanath to take oath as Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh on the 25th of March. Meanwhile, in Punjab, Bhagwant Mann announces his cabinet 10 ministers to be sworn in on Saturday in Chandigarh. Sonia Gandhi meets Ghulam Nabi Azad a day after meeting of rebel leaders. Azad says there was no question on leadership and that they discussed how to unitedly fight in the forthcoming elections. Amid global COVID surge, Centre writes to states, says don't let your guard down. Track, test, treat, follow COVID rules and vaccinate. US appoints Indian-American Dr. Ashish Jha as COVID coordinator. Bhagavad Gita introduced in Gujarat schools. Delhi Deputy Chief Minister says let them practice what they preach. Now Karnataka also mulls Gita for schools. Hello and welcome to NDTV 24/7. I'm Rohit Wellington. Let's begin with our top story. Amid Russia-Ukraine war, US President Joe Biden has spoken to Chinese President Xi Jinping. During their conversation, President Xi told Biden that the Ukraine crisis is not something we want to see. According to Chinese state agency Xinhua, President Xi said that conflict and confrontation are in no one's interest and that China and US should shoulder international responsibilities and work for world peace and tranquility. Meanwhile, China's ambassador to the United Nations called for an investigation into Russia's claims that the US and Ukraine are developing biological weapons on Ukrainian territory. Meanwhile, on the ground, on day 23 of the war, Russian missiles struck Lviv near Polish border. Meanwhile, 130 people have been rescued from the rubble of bombed Mariupol theatre. Ukraine claimed that 14,000 Russian troops have been killed since the start of war. Russian President Vladimir Putin accused Kyiv of delaying talks.
At western Ukraine's Lviv, Russian missiles attack an aircraft repair facility very close to the Lviv airport. Even as attacks and clouds of smoke continue to cover the skyline, in Kyiv, near homes, a school and a kindergarten, and a market at Kharkiv. At Mariupol, hundreds of civilians left in shock after this theatre used as a bunker was attacked. 3 weeks since Russia began its invasion on Ukraine, the World Health Organization says there have been 43 attacks on healthcare facilities. Amid a relentless fight back by Ukraine, country's officials have claimed around 320,000 Ukrainians have returned to help serve amid the war. President Zelensky thanking US for the military aid, even as 6 countries, including UK, US, France, accuse Russia of war crimes, challenging Russia before a United Nations Security Council meet. This as calls grow louder from several European politicians seeking for Ukraine President Zelensky to be nominated for Nobel Prize in 2022.
Також я вдячний президенту США Байдену за нову і дієву підтримку для нашої держави. Зрозумійте, я не можу розкрити вам всіх деталей і цього пакету підтримки і інших, бо це наша тактика, наша оборона, коли супротивник не знає, чого чекати від нас.
US President Joe Biden's call to Chinese President Xi Jinping at a crucial time, an attempt to mount pressure on Russia.
This is an opportunity for President Biden to assess where President Xi stands. There's been, of course, rhetorical support or the absence of clear rhetoric and denunciation or the absence of denunciation by China of what Russia is doing.
Amid Russia's allegations against US of operating biological laboratories across the world, including Ukraine.
Those laboratories are have been created by the United States all over the world, more than 300 laboratories in various countries. Many of them on the perimeter of the Russian Federation and the former Soviet republics, including Ukraine.
Weeks after India abstained from voting against Russia at various United Nations platforms, bipartisan letters from 7 members of US Congress to Ambassador of India urged India to condemn Russia as an aggressor instead of blaming both sides. Sneha Koshi for NDTV.
Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin appeared at a huge patriotic rally in Moscow on Friday, marking the 8th anniversary of the annexation of the Crimean Peninsula. He told the tens of thousands of people gathered at a stadium there that Russians have not had unity like this for a long time. Putin also praised the Russian military for its actions in Ukraine. As oil prices surge after Russia's war with Ukraine and amid reports that Russia is offering discounted oil to India, government sources have said that India is highly dependent on imports for meeting its energy requirements. Geopolitical developments have posed significant challenges to our energy security, and the jump in oil prices after the Ukraine conflict has now added to our challenges. India has to keep focusing on competitive energy sources. Government sources added that countries with oil self-sufficiency or those importing themselves from Russia cannot credibly advocate restrictive trading. Now, the body of Naveen Shekharappa, a medical student killed in Ukraine, will reach his home in Karnataka's Bengaluru on Monday. That's what Chief Minister Basavaraj Bommai has said. Shekharappa Gyanagowda has been demanding his son's body to be brought to India for final rites. The 21-year-old Indian was a resident of Karnataka's Haveri district, a student of Kharkiv National Medical University. He was standing in a queue at a grocery store when he was killed in Russian shelling in Ukraine's Kharkiv on the 1st of March. Meanwhile, former world #1 tennis star Roger Federer has promised to reach out to the children of war through his foundation. The Roger Federer Foundation will be supporting War Child Holland with an assistance of $500,000 for continued education of children displaced by war. Now, US President Joe Biden has roped in Ashish Jha, an Indian-American physician and academic who shot to prominence as a key scientific voice in the debate around the pandemic, to be the new White House COVID response coordinator. Ashish Jha, who was born in Madhubani in Bihar, completed his medical degree from the Harvard Medical School, and he became the dean of the Brown University School of Public Health in 2020. German lawmakers voted on Friday to abolish most of country's pandemic restrictions despite a surge in infections with almost 300,000 new daily cases. The Bundestag passed an amendment to the pandemic rules. The changes mean that the requirement to wear face masks will be dropped from most public settings from Sunday, though they may still be required on public transport. The big political story: Congress President Sonia Gandhi on Saturday met party leader Ghulam Nabi Azad a day after the core group of its G23 dissidents held a third round of discussions following the massive election drubbing. After the meeting, Mr. Azad said that there was no question on leadership and that the two leaders discussed how to unitedly fight the upcoming elections.
किस तरह से आने वाले जो इलेक्शन है विधानसभा के उसकी कैसी तैयारी की जाए, किस तरह से कांग्रेस संगठन को मजबूत किया जाए और उन चुनौतियों का और उन पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज का मुकाबला किया जाए, यही डिस्कशन था. इसके अलावा we have already that was decided already in the working committee that she should continue, and that is not the issue. Nobody has said that Mrs. Gandhi should just quit. Let me tell you very clearly.
Now, a day after Gujarat government announced Bhagavad Gita in the syllabus for class 6 to class 12 students, Delhi Deputy Chief Minister and Education Minister Manish Sisodia has welcomed the move with a swipe at state ministers.
बिल्कुल पढ़ाएं, लेकिन क्लास में नहीं. जिन लोगों ने पढ़ रखी है वो अमल में भी लाएं. जो पढ़ा रहे हैं गीता, सबसे पहले तो वो अपने जीवन में अमल में तो लाएं. काम करते हैं रावण वाले और बात करते हैं गीता की.
Now, the Karnataka government is also thinking of introducing Bhagavad Gita in schools.
So, Bhagavad Gita is not only for Hindus. All such things is for all. So if expert says that Bhagavad Gita is there, it should be introduced, definitely it will be introduced. Not from next year. First, I clarified that we have to decide whether moral science has to be introduced. Consulting things with Chief Minister, we want to introduce moral science in next academic year, not this academic year. Whichever definitely gives good impact on the children will be introduced, whether it is Bhagavad Gita or it is Ramayana, Mahabharata.
Already in our earlier school days syllabus, there are a lot of issues which is a part of Bhagavad Gita in our syllabus. There is nothing new. They wanted to just take it in a very big way. Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana or anything is not their, about Buddha or anything is not their right. It is the right of everyone. It is just a political gimmick. There is nothing in it.